I hesitated before turning on the camera. Because the thing that was on my mind for the past few minutes that I'm kind of just noodling over, I don't really want to talk about. So maybe that's just a good idea. Maybe that should be standard YouTube practice. Hesitate before you turn on your camera. Vlogging rule number 1: hesitate before you turn on the camera. That's a good idea. Which not to delve too far into what my brain is currently obsessing over, but there was no busted stuff this week. Today is usually when it would go live, and Trip didn't shoot anything, and I didn't edit anything. We were hoping that we would have a good balance, a back and forth. Trip does a video, there's enough video responses to cut a video out of that. Trip does another video, video response video. Trip video, video response video. And, our video responses fell off a cliff. There are no more video responses, so that arm of the content disappeared. Now, that format was something I was pitching late in the game and trying to communicate that we were going to be able to do as of, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. So it wasn't, it wasn't the intent that wasn't the intended format from the get-go. That's not what Trip bought into from the get-go. But it was going to make things much more manageable on his end. Remember, he's a PhD student, very busy, and he says that he's swamped, and I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying that's not true. Obviously, he is very busy. He is swamped. He's swamped every minute, every day, but he still has time to be on Facebook, because Facebook is now our lifeblood. I'm kidding. Trip, if you're watching this, I'm kidding. You know that. But he didn't feel like vlogging. He didn't feel like doing it. He didn't really say that, but come on, it's if you want to do it, you'll get in front of the camera and do it. Very simple. And that speaks to a lot of the things I'm talking about with Sogo and the problem that Steve Knight's format is presenting. He's asking for all of this content for free, And the problem is the best of that content is not just someone turning on a camera, taking 2 minutes out of their day and creating something. It's several hours of preparation, it's production work, it's editing work, and it's a person's time, in the case of Trip, whose time is extraordinarily valuable. So this formula of, you give me your content for free, and maybe eventually I'll compensate you for it, doesn't solve a short-term problem of very quick burnout. And, again, Trip didn't say that explicitly. He said he's swamped, he's busy. And the unspoken agreement was that we would have video responses this week as a video. Video response edit as a video, as an episode. So that's the problem. That's the problem with the Sogo formula. And I think in the coming weeks you're going to see, I think you're going to see it this week, and you're going to see it continually, this drop-off of providers, because, and maybe not, but you will see a soiling of the content. You'll see, if Trip pulls it to, Trip is the exception to the rule, because we have a really well-produced show happening with Busted Stuff. Nobody else is doing that level of production work. But the less return on investment there is for contributors, the less likely they are to post videos. And at the bare minimum, you're talking about comments, and the comments aren't there. I don't see them. Maybe they're on other videos, but they're not there. So, it's an unsustainable formula. And that's partly, that's what kind of inspired the noodles. But, you know, the point that I was driving at here was that my inferment is that Trip doesn't feel like it. Because he is swamped, he's too busy for it, but he doesn't feel like it. So he's not forcing himself on camera to do something he doesn't feel like doing. He has notes, he has topics of discussion, and I'm sure Trip can turn on a camera and talk about anything and make it interesting at any time of day. That's the benefit of being a great orator like Trip. But the point is, he didn't feel like it. And that's the problem with YouTube. That's the problem with Sogo. That's the problem with all over the garbage content on the internet, on YouTube, the video content. People are forcing themselves, or they're putting themselves in front of the camera when they don't have something to talk about. In Sogo's case, when they don't feel like talking. And you know, what you wind up with is something that lacks the passion. And if there's no passion, there's no point. Especially in terms, I mean, it's obvious in terms of just vlogging and talking like this, you know. It's there has to be a passion about it, because there's no point. There's no other benefit. There's no return on investment. There is no other motivation. It's more important in terms of Sogo, because the promised compensation is ephemeral and way down the line. There is no compensation for Trip's time. There's no compensation for Rochelle, Magpie Girls. There's no compensation for any of these people except for the two CEOs who are receiving the ad revenue, which is very minimal to begin with. The CEOs, the creators of the company, of the channel. There's no return on that investment. So if you're not 100%, 110% passionate about what you're doing, what you're saying, what you're talking about, it's just not worth doing. And it's not about anybody else. It's about why you're doing it in the first place. If you're not 100% passionate about it, you're just wasting your time. You are just wasting your time. And my God, how well does that just apply to every single goddamn thing we do in our lives? If you're not 100% passionate about it, you are wasting your time. I'm not 100% passionate about my job, but I am 100% passionate about getting my paycheck. So, you know, there's a trade-off. You know, there is that compensation. I'm 100% passionate about the compensation. Where's the compensation on Sogo? It doesn't exist. We thought it would be, at first blush, an audience, new eyeballs, but I'm not convinced. Sogo is unestablished. When they've been around for a few years and they've been able to grow an established audience, then I would be convinced. But in order to grow, they need the content, and the content needs compensation. It's a vicious circle. It's a vicious circle, which is why it's so difficult to get something like that off the ground. Which is why, ding, 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 maybe I will send this video to Trev. Which is why it has to be 100% community-oriented. So maybe that's the question. What if you take a far more community-focused approach to a religious YouTube channel? What if it is... What if it is... Take some of the formulas of Crumbination. You have centerpiece shows such as Busted Stuff, such as if we can get the format figured out and the presentation figured out, Religious with Magpie Girl, you have these centerpiece shows, but then everything else is community oriented. Tube Dorks was difficult because we had a 2-week run, and then that was just because it was so Crumbine motivated. Tube Dorks 2.0, I should say, and then it was just too much to do. Although interestingly, with my work habit right now, I bet I could revisit Tube Dorks and make that work, as long as there are people who are willing to blog. That would be interesting, an interesting experiment. But actually, yes, that version. What if there's a brand? What if there's a Tube Dorks brand? Here's an idea. Here's an idea. A Tube Dorks brand. I'll pitch this to Emily. And we use that format, that formula, to play with, to experiment with what Sogo wants, what Steve Knight and Sogo wants to do. Only do it right. And the key is that idea of community-oriented and driven content. You know, the point is that if you're trying to start something where there's no compensation, you have to make it worthwhile. You need to engage the audience that's going to keep you alive, because there's no compensation. So how do you engage the audience? You involve them. I think this is actually a really interesting idea, because everything I've been doing, I've had the Vlogatorium idea, which is essentially Tube Dorks 2.0. I've had that concept in the back of my mind in regards to the religious stuff with Trip and Rochelle. So I'm wondering if Tube Dorks, and I'm sure it was a little over a year ago that we were talking about this the first time, I wonder if Tube Dorks really isn't a good brand for that. You know, we have those 2 weeks. That is the perfect, that is a formula. That is a formula for this, and it's a formula that I enjoyed. I just didn't feel like doing the work at the time. And now Rob is available. Well, I don't know if he's really available, but he certainly has the gear, and he's up to speed on the editing for a project like that. And the other thing we know, you know, this is talking about sustainability of something like that. If there was one thing that Trip has always been great about, staying on top of things, but when everybody else fell out of interest with the original Tube Dorks, Trip was still there. He kept it going. Tube Dorks, your life on the internet. And then you can have a sub-brand, a sub-channel. I would start it off broad. This way it's not super religiously focused, and this way it's not encroaching. But if we can successfully refresh Tube Dorks, then you would have, or the Tube Dorks brand, or whatever you call it, probably step away from Tube Dorks unless Emily will hand it over to me completely. It's an interesting idea. I'm going to share with Trip, and we'll see if this sparks anything, because I think this is the way it needs to be. There needs to be a much more community-focused endeavor. So, that's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea. Stay tuned. Stay creative.